Welcome back to 94 Feet, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, our recap and reaction of Game 2 of the NBA Finals. As you guys saw, obviously, Golden State came away with the win 107-88 over the Boston Celtics. And I mean, I think this is the way a lot of people were expecting it to go. Golden State kind of bouncing back with that experience and whatnot. And even though we really didn't see it until the second half and the start of that third quarter, obviously it was the answer back that Golden State needed to stay in this series. Danny, kind of starting off with you, how do you feel about the way Golden State played here tonight?
I mean, like you said, Kay, we kind of expected it. Both of us have Boston in the series going to 7 and Boston winning at San Francisco. But we both had Golden State in this game, and the Warriors tonight, they kind of switched it up. For the first time, we saw Gary Payton back after a month. Game 1, he received a DNP. I was wondering, people were wondering, is Gary Payton going to be a factor? Because he was healthy in Game 1, didn't play. We saw him play 25 minutes, and I don't know if it was him to credit, just the defensive intensity the Warriors came with tonight. He has to be a factor, but I'm gonna put that on Curry. Curry, I think, was by far the best player on the Warriors, 29 points. But once again, Jason Tatum wanted Curry on the pick and rolls, and Curry, he stepped it up. He was staying in front of him. Draymond Green played out of control today in a Draymond Green classic where the ref on TV says Draymond should be getting his second technical, but because he's Draymond, he won't be getting ejected. We also saw a lot of pick and roll action from the Warriors. We've been watching the Warriors for the last 8 years, and what's special about them is their beautiful ball movement. Finding the open man, kicking it or along the arc to the open shooter. But we saw lots of pick and roll. It was pretty much Andrew Wiggins setting a screen for Curry, and then Curry kind of just cooking up Al Horford for an easy layup, or he was driving in, kicking it out. That's what I saw from the Warriors. I'm interested to see what their offensive game plan is going to be in Game 3, because this pick and roll really worked in their favor. Their small ball lineup was just too much. We saw Robert Williams. I know he's dealing with an injury, but he was kind of played off the floor. I think only 2 points, but only 14 minutes, and he was kind of unplayable. We saw it there. What was your take, Cade?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that you kind of mentioned is just the Golden State offense kind of getting back in that rhythm that we've seen them get in this entire season. Looking back at that first half, I felt like they were trying to just attack the paint a little bit too much. They were trying to get the mismatches, kind of try bringing Robert Williams or Al Horford out of the paint, and kind of just letting Curry or Wiggins kind of cut through and try getting up there. I really think that if that plan were to work out for them, you would see Golden State going into halftime with a much larger lead. That wasn't necessarily the case. They weren't getting the baskets that they wanted down in the paint. They're missing some, not even wide open, but just not uncontested shots down there. And obviously, like I said at the beginning of the show, they come into the game after halftime, and you just see that more natural playing style by the Warriors, where they're taking a lot more long-range shots. They're not necessarily focusing on trying to get to the basket as much as they are trying to just create shots around the perimeter. And then, of course, obviously, if there's a shot down low, let that happen. So I think that's one thing that I saw that I thought was a big game changer in this game for Golden State. Another thing, too, is I just think Golden State played the defense the way they have been playing the entire season as well. Obviously, the second best defense in the league. They played like they were the second best defense in the league. They were shutting down Boston. I mean, 3 of Boston's starters combined for 6 points total, which is, I mean, you don't need to look at the final score to know that your team's going to lose when 3 of your starters are scoring 2 points each. It's not a good look right there. So Golden State defense obviously showing up there, being a nuisance. As you mentioned, Draymond Green playing Draymond style of basketball as always, kind of just getting in the head of his opponents. And yeah, realistically, I think it comes down to just the fact that Golden State coming into that second half was just playing a lot more natural, a lot more fluid, just the way that I feel like a lot of people really feel Golden State is known for when it comes to their basketball play style.
Cade, you mentioned it. 3 starters who combined for 6 points. Marcus Smart probably played his worst game of basketball that I've ever seen him play. This is a guy that he's prone to have bad games, and he's one of those guys that, I respect it, but he'll keep shooting the ball. He'll keep trying, even if he's having a bad game. But he came out this game, just how many terrible passes was he throwing? He had 5 turnovers, but I think 2 in the first half were just overthrown passes to Jason Tatum. And, he's kind of looking at Tatum like, yo, you got to keep running. But it's like, a smart, you're really not putting the ball in the right place. In game 3, I'm interested to see if, Payne Pritchard didn't have a great game 2, but are we going to see a little bit more game 3 Payne Pritchard in game 1 in that critical fourth quarter where, the Celtics went insane? All the role players, we mentioned how all these role players didn't do much today. That has to be, that's really the difference. Role players stepped up last game, but Payne Pritchard outplayed Marcus Smart 9 minutes to 3 minutes in that fourth quarter, where the Celtics really, just had an offensive eruption from players that weren't Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I'm kind of, Pritchard, he's kind of a little bit, he's got a better offensive game. Obviously, he doesn't have that defensive, he's a hustle player, but he just can't stay in front of, players like Smart can. But Pritchard, he's kind of smooth on the outside. He can attack, shoot threes. I know he was 0 for 3 from deep, but we've seen Pritchard games where he comes in and just kind of lights it up, and he can go ISO as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Pritchard is going to be a key to Boston's offense going into game 3. And I think that's something that with the Golden State team, just how good they are offensively when they're able to actually get hot and to get things going like they were tonight. You kind of just have to go at it, just kind of scrap the idea of sticking with the solid defense and kind of just go at it where you have to bring in your offensive team or players to kind of bump that score up and hopefully kind of keep into it. I think as one thing that we've mentioned consistently is that these are two teams that can't really close things out. So what happens in a game where, going into the third quarter, you take out somebody like Marcus Smart, put in a guy like Pritchard, kind of lead an offensive comeback right there, not necessarily we're not realistically looking for defensive stops, but hoping that maybe Golden State misses a few shots along the way. And like I said, kind of try getting the back offensively, get back those points, get that point spread a little bit closer while letting the point total continue to grow. And then obviously going into the ninth quarter, see if you can find a way to kind of get around that Golden State offense, kind of similar to what happened in game 1. I mean, obviously, as we mentioned, Boston had a fantastic fourth quarter in game 1. But if you're talking about going into the fourth quarter with it maybe only being a 7 or 8 point lead, I think there's a chance that if you bring in offensive players in the third quarter and you kind of scrap that idea of sticking with that solid number 1 defense in the league that the Celtics have, kind of work your way back into it. And then, like I said, let the fourth quarter play out in a way where you either see this Warriors go up like crazy and you kind of just have to give them the game at that point, or you bring in those defensive players, tire out the stars that Golden State has, and then kind of let your offense, but and especially the star players that Boston has, like Tatum, kind of lead that comeback and hopefully in for a win.
Kid, I want to bring it back to the Boston side. Kid, are you worried heading into game 3 for this Boston team? Like, I know you have them in 7, like I said. Are you worried?
Game 3 in particular, yes, a little bit, just because it's been so long since the city of Boston has seen a finals game, and I think that's going to play into the players' mindset. Obviously, that's going to affect the crowd energy there. I think in game 3, I obviously I wouldn't be enough of a difference to call it a series, but I do think that Boston does lose game 3, loses that first game back at home. And again, it goes back to the experience that Golden State has. I think it just, with the way that Boston has played, especially in game 2, obviously there's going to be changes that need to be made. And I think kind of having that switch going from San Francisco to Boston, it's not going to necessarily be that fluid change that a lot of people are hoping for. And Golden State's going to use that to their advantage and take game 3 on the road.
I kind of agree with you that I'm worried too, because we've seen 8 quarters of basketball so far this finals, and even though if you look at the first quarter here, the Boston only lost the first quarter by 1. They lost the second quarter by 1 as well. But I really think that Boston has only played about 1.5 quarters of good basketball. That third quarter in game 1, or half of that third quarter in game 1, and the fourth quarter in game 1. You look at the stat, like just looking at the game of basketball, they dropped 30 points in that first quarter, but it wasn't smooth. There was turnovers. They weren't getting out in transition. I'm worried also because you look at their what they've done this postseason so far. They've already lost 4 home games this postseason, and I kind of want to say that Game 3 might be a must win for the Celtics because it's all about how they're going to respond to this loss. Heading in that Milwaukee series, it was 1-1 just like it is now. Heading into Boston, but they were coming off a huge road win. In that Miami series, it was 1-1, just like it is now, heading into Boston, and they were coming off a huge road Game 2 win, 127-102, if you remember that game. Jimmy Butler just wasn't there, and they responded with these huge road wins with just let down losses as favorites at home. This time, they need to bounce back at home. So they're going to need the crowd. They're going to need to feed off that energy, and we haven't seen them have to do that early in the series. Tonight it was really only Jason Tatum. Last game 1 post game, we kind of got into a little argument. Cade, is Jaylen Brown a star or not? I was saying he's a star. JB, I'm gonna need you in game 3 today. If I'll pull up his stats real quick. 5 for 17 tonight with 17 points. At halftime he had 15 points, but he was 4 for 12, and he just looked off. He kind of returned to earth. He just went nuts game 1, but he's gonna need a better game than that. Tatum, like I said, really the only player to show up tonight. I mean, how many missing players on the Celtics were there tonight? Geez, I'll shout out Derek White. He held his ground in that first quarter, but he missed a couple layups. So I'm interested to see how they respond in game 3.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be the biggest thing is just seeing how well these starters really put up, make those adjustments to kind of combat the fast-paced offense that Golden State has. But even then, I mean, you look at Jaylen Brown; he put up 17 points. He was the Celtics' second leading scorer. I mean, obviously, 17 points. That's not bad. That's going to be able to help you if your entire team is working together, and that wasn't the case here. And then even then, you look at the Celtics in general this game. They had a fantastic start to the game. They were hitting their threes. They looked like a nice and fluid team. For a second there, I thought the Celtics were going to possibly take game 2 of the series and go up 2-0 going back to Boston. But, of course, after that second half started, everything kind of just started falling apart. I mean, you look at even Tatum, Brown, everybody who put up double digits points for the Celtics, a lot of them got those it got into double digit figures in that first half. They really didn't have that much of a influence in the second half, and that's what you saw. I mean, that reflected in the score right there. I mean, Boston, or not Boston, my bad. Golden State went up big. They dominated the second half, and they were able to come away with the win. Now, of course, that has to change going to game 3, because when you're going back home, you're going back to Boston, you're going to be playing in front of your home fans. It's obviously a change is going to be needed. But with that being said, you alluded to the past 2 series where they got big wins on the road, came back home, kind of fell apart and get that game 3 in each of those series. I think having a loss in game 2 in this situation is going to help them out a little more, simply because they kind of have their backs against the wall a little more. They kind of are they're on edge a little more, and they got to be able to kind of just work around that in order to really feel that pressure needed to advance and kind of make the changes that are necessary. I still think Golden State is going to come away with winning game 3, but of course, I think that this loss is going to do more help for the Boston Celtics than or it's going to do more to help them harm them.
I'm gonna take Boston in game 3. I think Boston's gonna figure out the matchups. It looks like it looked like they really couldn't figure out anything this game. But like I said, they haven't looked good for 6.5 quarters of basketball, but they've still managed to keep it close. At halftime earlier today, it was 52-50, and Boston, their point guard Marcus Smart couldn't dribble the ball, couldn't pass the ball. Jaylen Brown was just chucking up shots. They were playing terrible basketball and only down by 2 at halftime. We talked about it in game 1. They were only down 4 after Steph Curry dropped 21 in that first quarter. So it's like they're playing bad basketball, but somehow staying in the game. A player we haven't talked about is Clay. We're talking about how the Celtics had all these missing players that just, I guess, didn't want to show up for work today. But Clay, heading into the series, I took some heat. Shout out to Jonah for calling me out, saying I was a little too harsh on Clay, saying I haven't seen enough from him. But Game 1, 11 points, 4 for 19, and then tonight 6 for 14 with 15 points. The Warriors are gonna need Clay because we saw Jordan Poole. He was electric tonight, right? But in Game 1, he was played off the floor, and I'm expecting that to happen later on in the series when he's not shooting from half court and draining half court pull up shots at the buzzer. He's a player that can get played off the floor, whereas Clay, obviously, he's not the defensive player he once was, but you can't, Clay's gonna stay on the floor, and the Warriors are gonna need Game 6 Clay in games 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, no, I agree. Klay Thompson does need to step it up a lot more, and that will come eventually. I mean, you saw Steve Kerr keep him in after he started subbing out his starters late in the game, just to see if Klay could kind of get in that rhythm again and kind of take that momentum going into Game 3. But at the same time, yeah, that's going to be a big help. Luckily, Jordan Poole was there. I think that's a very underrated story about this game so far. Is that I think Jordan Poole was one of the biggest momentum builders of this game. Steph had his big shots, but you look at the end of that third quarter, Poole had 2 big threes, including that buzzer beater at the end to really put them ahead of Boston. So I think as of now, I mean, Klay definitely was able to get away with having 2 back-to-back not great games. Obviously, Game 1 was a different story. They ended up losing that game. Other than Steph, nobody really had a fantastic game. Obviously, tonight, I mean, you have 4 starters in double figures. You have Jordan Poole putting up 17. That helps a lot, obviously. I mean, they only scored 107 points on the day, and that's not really something. I feel like Golden State definitely puts up a lot more points, but still is enough to be able to get the job done. And I think, again, as you mentioned, it's going into the rest of the series. There's going to be those inconsistencies with the rest of that roster. Jordan Poole, I mean, like I said, he put up 17 tonight. How consistently is he going to be able to put up those numbers throughout the series? My guess is that he's not going to be able to. I mentioned it in the first, I guess the first show before the final started, that I think for Golden State, Jordan Poole would be the answer for the he'd be the difference maker for the Golden State Warriors. I mean, we know that Klay is going to, at least at some point, probably produce. Steph is going to produce. Draymond's going to produce, whether that's as a point total or just being on the court. There's going to be these players on Golden State that are going to be a difference maker, but Jordan Poole is going to be that guy that's going to be coming off the bench. And if he's putting up a big game, that Golden State's going to be in good hands, But like I said, going back to Klay real quick, if that Jordan Poole is not going to be consistent, that means that Klay Thompson, a starter, has to figure out a way to be more consistent on the court in order to help Warriors win.
Another play, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Klay is definitely necessary. Klay or Kade, a player we have. I'm calling you Klay. Another player we haven't seen so far in the series, but we saw today. We haven't seen too much in the playoffs. Is Bjelica. Steve Kerr kind of mixing him into the rotation. He was I thought really effective in that second quarter. He had 2 quick buckets. I know he had an ugly turnover and he didn't really see action until the fourth, but he also in the fourth quarter he played a little bit, made another big shot. He kind of gives me like fast Andrew Bogut vibes where it's like, he can run. He can't really block like Bogut, but I guess it's really just, he's good underneath the basket and he can drop dimes. I really want to see more Bjelica heading into the series, and I think he matches up well against, when Boston goes small and puts Horford at the 5 and, Grant Williams at the 4, Bjelica can stay in front of both Grant Williams, maybe even Derek White, and definitely Al Horford. What do you think about that, kid?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think unfortunately, I will say, I think he's a player on Golden State's roster that you can't really risk putting in unless Golden State is up in the game, whether that's only by 4 points or they're up by 16, 24, whatever. I think that
just because of on the defensive end, you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Just because that, I mean, you saw it today at the beginning of the game when Boston's hot, they do pretty well. Or even in the fourth quarter too of the last game. But when Boston's hot, they do well. They know how to hit the 3. They know how to drive and get layups through contact. So I think, again, like I said, is that on the defensive side, you're kind of losing out on that factor. And I feel like he's only going to be a real benefit when the Warriors are up in a game. But again, I agree. I think that he's kind of that signal that the Warriors are doing well, is that when he's in, everything is kind of clicking for the Warriors, and they're in a position where they have a chance to win that game.
Any other players we gotta cover, Kate, or did we hit everything?
I do actually want to bring it back to Jason Tatum real quick.
Yeah.
I think even though he was that team leader for the Boston Celtics, you do look at the way that he did perform today. I mean, one of the biggest like stat lines that came out of today's game that just is shocking in my opinion, because I wouldn't really expect this out of a guy like Jason Tatum. But in plus or minus, he was minus 36, which I think was the lowest of his career. Which is, I mean, again, like I said, you could put up 28 points, but when you're putting up a stat like that, that's not going to be a stat that's going to help your team win at all.
Plus minus, it's an interesting number because if you watch the game, I really feel like JT was just the best player for the Celtics tonight. 6 for 9 from deep. But I get what you're saying. Other than threes, he was only 2 for 10 from the field. But I like his approach to the game. In game two. In game one, he started off 2 for 7 and just kept passing. He was way too passive. 13 assists. I was critical of him for that. But today, he started off 2 for 7 once again, and he just kept shooting. I feel like Boston just wasn't able to get in a rhythm in that third quarter. And they put up 14 points in the third quarter. That's just unacceptable. One of my basketball coaches in high school, he would say, if you win the third quarter, you win the game, because coming out of halftime, that separates like the good teams from the great teams. Obviously, Warriors have been here so long. They know how important that third quarter is, momentum into the fourth. JT, I'm not worried yet, but I think that minus 36 is a little bit boof, just because I think JT was really the only player to show up.
See, okay, I agree. I think he's going to be okay. I mean, you obviously saw that improvement from game 1 to game 2. He's getting to that point where he's getting a lot more comfortable. He's going to be able to make the adjustments needed. I think in game 3 you're going to see a little bit of a decline. I think he's still going to be putting up good points. I think you're just going to see him fall back a little bit, just because again, playing in front of Boston in the first time, or for the first time in the finals in a long time for the city. I mean, we've heard so much about Boston sports fans. It's not the easiest to play in front of them. I think he's going to do his best to block that out, but I don't think it's necessarily going to work as well as he think it'll be. So again, I don't think he's going to put up the numbers everybody would expect him to in game 3, being back at home. But at the same time, I mean, like you mentioned, he was 6 for 9 from 3 today. But those 6, I'm pretty sure all 6 of those made threes happened in the first half, which again, like I said, it's a very close first half, but that second half is when Golden State kind of got things clicking and they ran away with the game. So it's just a matter of, again, I've stressed it so much in this show, just consistency. How often can a player be consistent enough to help a team win? In this case, Jason Tatum, even Jaylen Brown, they did good enough in the first half where if they kept that up throughout the entirety of the game, I think you're looking at a different score. And maybe not necessarily saying that Boston wins this game, but it's not a 19-point loss for them. It might be a 1 or 2 point loss. Golden State isn't putting up 107 on them. But of course, as mentioned, they just weren't able to hold that momentum the entire game. So that's what I'm saying. I think he's not necessarily the star of this game for Boston. I think it was the star of the first half for Boston. I think Derek White kind of ran away with that in the second half. I think he did a little bit more to make him presence on the court for the Celtics then when things were falling apart for the team. But like I said, I think you're right. Minus 36, I mean, you could interpret that whatever way you want. At the end of the day, though, it's just about being more consistent. And even though he might take a step back in game 3, I think by game 4, with the series tied now, or I guess not tied after game 3, but or at least going into game 4, but it's going to be close enough to where going into game 4, that's when things are going to start clicking for him. And that's when you're going to see the more consistent regular season Jason Tatum that we've seen throughout the entire season.
I will agree with you on that, Cade. I feel like, after 2 games in the finals, we haven't seen like a Jason Tatum take over yet. We keep saying he hit 6 threes, but most of them were quick shots, spot up, off an open pick and roll shot. It's not like he really cooked in this game. We saw JB really take over the game in game 1 in that second half, and we really haven't seen Tatum like, he's demanding Curry on all these screens, and it's like, I don't know if it's something's off, but he's really gonna have to figure out what's in his bag in game 3. I'm expecting a big Jason Tatum bounce back game. Give me the Celtics by 3 points at home in Game 3.
See, I like that. I think Boston. It's definitely going to be the closest game of the series so far. I'm calling it again. You called it a 3-point win for Boston. I'm going to say it's somewhere within 5. I'll give it 4, but I'll give it to Golden State. Um, and I think this is going to be the game that Boston really figures itself out. Just as a team in the finals, everybody was very high on them after Game 1. They thought that okay, screw it. They're no final experience on that team. Doesn't matter. We're going to take down Golden State in Game 1, win one on the road, and really at that point take home court from Golden State. Obviously, that changes. Golden State bounces back the way I think a lot of people were expecting them to. So now we got ourselves a new series. It's a best of 5 series now. And again, like I said, I think Game 3 is going to be a little bit more of another tune-up game for Boston, kind of just seeing if Ime Udoka kind of scripts up something a little different, see how that works against Golden State. But by Game 4, they have to have something going, and I think that's when they will really start having something going. I'm going to say it right now. I mean, I know we still got another game in between there, but I think Game 4 is going to be the Jason Tatum game. I think that's going to be the game that really highlights that turnaround for Boston in a way where they start making that finals push and really start looking like serious title contenders, but title winners. So I think that, again, like I said, give it Game 3, let them cool down a little bit, let them get all that experience in, having 2 games on the road now and 1 game at home, and then by Game 4, I think that's when Boston really starts clicking as a team and it really starts showing what they can do against Golden State.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. I will take back my pick, my Boston by 3 pick. If I see 14 minutes of Daniel Tice once again on the floor, I subtract my pick, and I might go with the Warriors in like 5 if I keep seeing Daniel Tice on the floor. Udoku, you got Udoka. How do you say his name, Cade?
Udoka, Ime Udoka. Yeah,
Udoka,
that's right.
thank
Just
you.
I
We
I have to
gotta figure
check
it out.
myself, but
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. Thank you. I
yeah,
know I
no,
butchered it like 5 times on that first episode, but he's got to figure out that rotation, figure out what he's gonna do. Maybe Robert Williams, try some heat on those knees or ankles, whatever it is. Man, I just need someone other than Tice on the floor.
yeah, I agree. Okay, let's go into our Game 3 preview as we kind of have been going on for the past few minutes. But yeah, no, I agree. I think this is going to be where Ime Udoka finds his lineup. I think this game he might go a little smaller. I think Robert Williams might be taking this game not off per se, but I think he's not going to start Robert Williams this game. I think you're going to see somebody like Grant Williams come in, find some way to kind of get those perimeter defenders in to kind of slow down that hot Golden State start. But I think I at least I expect that would happen if somebody like Robert Williams was in. And I think that that's what you're gonna end up seeing. You're gonna see Grant Williams come in for Robert Williams. 2 Williams, they messed me up a little bit. But yeah, Grant Williams coming for Robert Williams. He's going to be a starter for Game 3. You're going to see Boston kind of shift its eyes towards a more of a perimeter defense instead of looking to kind of protect the paint as much as they have been. And I think, again, like I said, Golden State's going to answer back with that one, but I think it's going to be an interesting start for how Boston starts Game 3 of the series.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really do like that Boston small ball lineup with Horford at the 5. Something that I really didn't like what I saw out of that Boston offense tonight was Horford. I know he had 2 points, but he was 0 for 0 from deep. It's like, Al Horford at the 5, he's able to stretch out the floor. He can sit out at the corner, and he'll hit that 3. We've seen it before. We saw he came up huge in Game 1, but in previous series we saw multiple 20-point pieces where Horford stepped up. And like you said, Grant Williams at that 4. I really think Robert Williams, he's really only useful if Kevon Looney's on the floor, and we kind of saw both of them had similar amount of minutes tonight. But last series we saw Robert Williams kind of just dominate Bam Adebayo, but the Warriors just don't have a big man like that is going to post up and go to work, where Robert Williams is going to thrive as a shot blocker and rim protector. So unfortunately, as much as I love Robert Williams, such an underrated center. He's a perfect player for a team with superstar guards. But in this series, unfortunately, I don't think he's found a home, or he's
Yeah,
gonna
no,
find a home.
yeah, I agree with that. I think the big thing here is if you're talking about a healthy Robert Williams, we might be having a different conversation here. But of course, you're slow when you're going up against a small ball Golden State Warriors lineup. He's not gonna be the best option for that, and that's why I'm saying Grant Williams is gonna come in as a starter. They're gonna give Robert Williams a little bit more rest, not play him as many minutes. Obviously, I mean, I think he only played 14 minutes this game. I can do a quick check on that one. Um, but yeah, I think Robert Williams is going to take that break. Grant Williams is going to come in. I think that small ball lineup's going to do a lot more to help against Golden State. Uh, and I mean, you saw it tonight. I felt like that small ball lineup for Golden State worked out really well for them because they were doing so well shooting the three. I think if you're Boston, you go in and start protecting the three more. I mean, if Golden State's going to beat you, let them beat you with the two. Don't let them beat you with the three. They're going to make that three almost consistently. But if you let them beat you with the two, I feel like you're almost working them more. And again, like I said, you're setting yourself up for a win in game 4 that way.
I don't want to be too hard looking at these matchups in game 2 because I feel like that Gary Payton returning kind of threw off Boston. He played 25 minutes tonight, and I really don't think I guess he had to have been effective. He stayed out there that long, but it's not like he was clamping anyone up, I felt like. And the Warriors were so small, they have that small ball lineup, but Draymond Green was playing most of the 5 tonight, Wiggins at the 4. They had Otto Porter at the 4 as well, but it was I want to say Clay, Curry, and Gary Payton like as the 3 wings up top. That's really small ball, and we saw Boston, they came out prepared with Robert Williams and Al Horford on the floor. Derek White, those are big guys, and I'm interested to see, what they're going to do in game 3. I think they'll figure it out. Gary Payton, not super scary on the offensive end. Big Otto Porter game, by the way. Otto Porter kind of slept on. He hit a big 3, played some good defense, but I think they'll figure it out in game 3.
Yeah, I think again, like I said, I got Golden State winning this game, but I think this is going to be the game where Boston really does figure themselves out. And again, as I mentioned earlier too, I think they're going to try looking at a defense that stops that 3 more because you saw at the beginning of game 2 that when Golden State was driving, if there was any real contest, they weren't really putting up a good shot on the basket. Like there were some that were going in, but the real only shots in the paint that were going in for Golden State were the ones at the high post. So again, like I said, I think they adjusted to that. They started shooting more threes. And that's what kind of built that lead up for them. Again, like I said, I think this is going to be a lineup for Boston where they're going to start looking towards defending the 3 a lot better. If Golden State's going to beat you, they're going to beat you with the 2. And I think it's going to be a close game. But again, like I said, I got Golden State winning. So before we wrap everything up, Danny, let's hear it. I know you said it earlier, but just to who knows, maybe something changed. Let's hear your prediction for game 3.
All right, game 3, I'm going to go 103-100 Boston. Big Jason Tatum game, big JB game as well.
All right. I liked how close of a game that is. Like I said, I think the experience is going to show in this game. I've got Golden State. I got them winning, I'll say 111-107. It's going to be close. I like the idea of how close that game is going to be. But again, like I said, experience is going to take away from there. You got any final thoughts on today, Danny?
I think I said everything. Yeah, I'm all good here.
All right, I think I'm the same. Thank you guys for joining tonight. We appreciate it. Make sure to catch us on Wednesday for a recap of Game 3. Should be a good one back in Boston. If you haven't yet followed us on the socials, it's down there on the ticker, but it's at 94 Feet Show, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. That's where we'll be putting up the live streams. And of course, if you ever want to rewatch any of these live streams, they'll be on Twitch for I think about 14 days, and then of course they'll be on YouTube for full time. So thank you guys for joining in tonight, and we'll see y'all Wednesday.